I believe that the purpose of classroom management is to ensure, from a teacher standpoint, that the day and the lesson go smoothly and without too much distraction. Distraction is, of course, inevitable, but I believe with a proper classroom management plan and proper implementation of that plan, you can limit distractions very easily. So, my approach to classroom management begins with planning for the entire year. Oftentimes, teachers will begin teaching a class with no set plan, which leads their students down a frustrating and confusing path. I think we can all remember a time in class when one of our teachers had no idea what they were doing from one day to the next, and as a result, we did not learn nearly as much material as we could have. So whether I'm preparing my content for the next day or preparing for certain scenarios that I might face, it's important that I know exactly what I want to do each day of the school year, at least a basic outline of what I want to cover that day. One of the most important parts of planning for the entire year is knowing how many days you're going to have to teach. Whether I'm putting in certain snow days that might be missed or assemblies that might cause me to miss a class period or two. Just working in those days so that even if I don't use all those days, I have extra time to go over new material. But if each one of those days does happen, if we do end up with 6 snow days and I prepared for that, well, then I shouldn't lose any time. Another thing that I want to do that would help my approach to classroom management is use high probability requests, which include asking students to do things that are easy to comply with before moving on and asking them to do more difficult tasks. An example of this would include asking a student who refuses to do all 10 of their homework problems if they'd at least do one. And then the next day, if they've done that one, ask them to do 2. And eventually you work your way up to where asking your student to complete that homework really isn't that big of a deal to them. So my teaching style, according to the test that we took earlier in the year, it was authoritative. An authoritative teaching style is one in which the teacher places limits and controls on the students, but still encourages independence and responsibility. I want my students to know that I'm in charge and I'm the authority figure of the classroom, but I also want them to take responsibility for their learning and understand that they play a large role in the learning process and the learning environment as a whole. So, nature of students, I believe that students are innately good. I believe that each student enters the classroom on their first day ready to be liked, ready to learn, but through maybe feelings of failure or embarrassment or teachers that don't work with their strengths, students begin to fall through the cracks, and as a result, they dislike school and they cause problems in class. So rather than encouraging students to work in the same way, I want to encourage students to work to their strengths. I feel as if the school system has forced all students to learn in the same manner, and through that, students have a negative attitude. So I believe all students would have a positive attitude towards learning if they'd not been beaten down before arriving to the classroom. So my goal is to get students back to practicing learning to their strengths, and hopefully as a result, it'll change their attitude towards learning and towards the classroom as a whole. So establishing classroom rules and routines is huge as far as procedure goes. On the first day of school, I want to go over rules and procedures and routines and everything. I think the first day of school is extremely important. I think it sets the tone for the rest of the year, which is why I want to set these rules and routines from the start. So as far as rules, I don't believe in having a lot of rules, which is why I plan to create 2 or 3 myself and then allow my students to create a couple more with me. So by creating my rules first, I'm able to ensure that what I find to be most important in classroom management is covered. But after that, by allowing my students to create rules with me, I can gain insight into what they think is the most important in the classroom. Consequences and rewards should always fit the action. I don't believe in having a set consequence for everything that happens because I believe that each situation is entirely different from the other. However, having a basic outline that students know if you do this certain thing, it will cause at the very least 1 hour of after school detention or something like that. And then rewards, I think the reward needs to fit the student. Offering a student the opportunity to listen to music while they do their homework might be great for one student, but it might not be a reward at all for another student. So it really just depends on the student. Discipline. So preventive discipline is a form of discipline that looks to reward positive behaviors rather than punish negative behaviors. So I like the idea of preventive discipline a lot. I think it is a great thing because it plans to help keep the environment of the classroom a positive one rather than bringing it back from a negative one. However, I think it's important to have another plan in place because you can prevent as much as you want and something's still going to go wrong and you're still going to have to use some sort of negative discipline. Supportive discipline includes using things like positive praise and high probability requests. And I like the idea of using supportive discipline because like preventive discipline, I'm focusing on positive behaviors that my students exhibit rather than the negative behaviors. And then using corrective discipline means implementing a plan of discipline that you can have ready when negative behaviors arise. So corrective discipline is different from preventative and supportive because rather than dealing with positive behaviors, corrective discipline deals with negative behaviors. Corrective discipline is not what I want to use because it means that I have not really succeeded in preventing the problems from occurring, but I also know that it's entirely necessary if I hope to keep my classroom managed. So overall, I believe that the purpose of classroom management is to ensure that the classroom is run smoothly day in and day out. Having a plan for each day laid out can help tremendously in ensuring that a classroom is run smoothly, and it's something that I plan on doing. Having rules, procedures, routines, and discipline is also extremely important in making sure that my classroom is run smoothly. I believe that discipline, both positive and negative, plays a large factor in classroom management. I believe that too little discipline can allow for a classroom to get out of control, while too much discipline can have the exact same effect as students will feel the need to rebel. So the key to classroom management, in my opinion, is knowing what battles to pick, what battles to let slide, and remembering that constant punishment does not necessarily show your authority.